In the vast valley of Elk Ridge, Montana, where mountains stand like ancient sentinels against the sky, Sam Winters led a life as rugged and enduring as the terrain itself. At 65, Sam's weathered face bore the marks of a man who had known both happiness and grief in equal parts. His hair, once the rich hue of tilled earth, had turned to the silver of hoarfrost, yet his eyes stayed as clear and keen as the streams slicing through his land. Sam hadn't always been a rancher. For 22 years, he served his nation, training military working dogs, German shepherds with spirits as steadfast as they were courageous. Upon retiring, Sam returned to his family's sheep ranch in Elk Ridge, accompanied by Duke, his last canine companion. Together, they slipped into the cadence of ranch life, caring for a modest herd of merino sheep that yielded some of the county's finest wool. 8 years into their civilian routine, Duke remained impressive. His black and tan coat had grayed slightly around the snout, but his frame was still robust, his stride carrying the poise of a soldier. Trained to protect, Duke treated his role guarding the sheep as a sacred duty. At night, Sam could hear the soft tread of Duke's paws circling the pen, issuing sharp barks if coyotes or wolves ventured near. After Sam's wife, Laura, passed 3 years prior, the ranch had grown hushed. Duke became Sam's sole companion. Their son, James, lived in Denver, visiting only for holidays with his young family. On long winter evenings, it was just Sam and Duke by the hearth, both aging in their own way, finding solace in each other's company. That autumn turned bitter early, with icy gusts sweeping down from the peaks into the valley. The approaching winter promised to be fierce, one of the harshest Elk Ridge had seen in decades. Sam prepared diligently, repairing fences, stockpiling feed for the sheep, and stacking firewood for the cold months ahead. Everything shifted on a grim October morning. Snow fell early, blanketing the hills lightly. Sam released Duke as usual, expecting the dog to return shortly, as he always did. But this time, Duke didn't come back. Sam donned his jacket, hat, and boots, stepping into the cold. The snow had ceased, leaving a world of stark silence. He called for Duke, his voice ringing across the empty fields, but no response came. With unease growing in his chest, Sam traced Duke's paw prints across the field, leading toward the pine woods on the ranch's western edge. The tracks grew faint under the forest canopy, but Sam pressed on, calling and pausing to listen. After half a mile, he caught a faint bark, not Duke's usual alert, but something urgent, pressing. Sam hastened toward the sound, finding Duke beside a fallen tree, pacing restlessly. The dog seemed agitated, circling the trunk. Sam approached cautiously, unsure what Duke had found, perhaps an injured creature, a raccoon, or even a bear cub. As he neared, he saw the cause of Duke's concern, a young female bobcat, huddled in a hollow beneath the tree's roots, shivering and thin, with a bloody gash on her hind leg, vivid against the snow. Sam's presence made the bobcat recoil, her lips curling to bare sharp teeth. Yet Duke showed no hostility. Instead, he lay in the snow, head on his paws, a submissive stance Sam had never seen him use with a wild animal. Sam hesitated. Years of handling animals taught him that a wounded creature could be dangerous. But Duke's behavior gave him pause. Trained to repel predators from the sheep, Duke was acting as if he wanted to shield the bobcat. It was risky, but Sam couldn't abandon the injured animal. Drawing on his experience with injured sheep, he acted. Slowly, he shed his outer coat, moving with deliberate care. Duke, sensing Sam's intent, kept his distance, maintaining his gentle posture as if reassuring the bobcat. In a swift but cautious move, Sam draped his coat over the bobcat, bundling her up. She struggled weakly, exhausted by pain. Sam lifted her, feeling her frail frame and racing heart through the fabric. Duke stood, almost proud, and led the way back to the ranch. In the barn, Sam placed the bobcat in an old cage, warmed by a heater. He carefully cleaned her wound a deep cut, likely from a wire trap or jagged metal, and applied antibiotic salve used for the sheep. The bobcat, too weak to resist, watched him with wary yellow eyes. Duke sat outside the cage, observing intently, showing no aggression but rather concern, occasionally whining softly as if urging Sam on. "We'll call her Sierra," Sam murmured, the name fitting the lithe creature like the distant mountains visible from his window each morning. In the days that followed, Sam debated contacting the Wildlife Service. Keeping a wild bobcat was illegal, even with good intentions. But a fierce winter storm hit, isolating the ranch with heavy snow, cutting off roads and phone lines. The decision was made for him. Sierra would stay for now. Surprisingly, Duke took a keen interest in her recovery. He lingered by the cage, sometimes bringing toys and old ball, a nod boot as if to entertain his guest. At first, Sierra ignored these gestures, crouching in the cage's corner. But as her wound healed and her strength returned, curiosity began to replace fear.
A week later, Sierra ate the chicken Sam provided and allowed him to change her bandages without resistance. Most striking was the bond forming between her and Duke. The bobcat no longer flinched when Duke neared the cage. Instead, she approached the wire mesh, tentatively touching his nose with her paw. Sam knew Sierra couldn't stay forever. When the weather cleared, he'd have to release her, but watching Duke and Sierra play through the cage bars, he saw that the unlikeliest friendships could be the strongest. By the second week, Sam began letting Sierra out of the cage briefly, always with Duke nearby. Despite her healing wound, the bobcat moved with grace. Exploring the barn cautiously, Duke shadowed her, never too close to intimidate, always present as a protector, a friend. Remarkably, Sierra began mimicking Duke's behavior, observing how he responded to Sam's commands. Though Sam didn't expect to tame a bobcat, he noticed Sierra reacting to simple calls not from training, but from a desire to belong to this strange pack. One snowy evening, Sam took a chance, allowing both Duke and Sierra into the house. It was a risk, but he felt their trust had grown. The bobcat trailed Duke into the living room, her yellow eyes alert but unafraid. She watched Duke leap onto the old armchair by the fireplace, his favorite spot. After a brief pause, Sierra joined him, curling up beside the doll. Sam wondered what Laura would think of this. A wild bobcat and a German shepherd nestled together like old companions. A warm spread in his chest, a feeling absent for too long. As November turned to December, the harsh weather persisted, but Duke and Sierra's bond deepened. Sierra roamed the ranch freely, sometimes vanishing into the woods for hours but always returning to eat and sleep beside Duke. Sam began taking them along when tending the sheep. Duke performed his herding duties while Sierra watched from a nearby rock, occasionally darting off to investigate a shrub or crevice. The sheep never panicked in Sierra's presence, as if sensing she was part of Sam's peculiar flock. One day, when the snow briefly stopped, Bill Henderson's truck rolled into Sam's driveway. Bill, a neighboring rancher and close friend, brought supplies and news. "Roads are rough," he said, stepping into the kitchen. "But they say a thaw's coming soon." He froze mid-sentence, jaw-dropping as Sierra entered, trailed by Duke, both pausing at the sight of the stranger. "Good heavens, Sam," Bill whispered. "Is that a bobcat?" Sam had anticipated this moment. Guilt flickered briefly, but seeing Duke and Sierra together, he knew this was something extraordinary. He shared the story, finding Sierra injured, Duke's refusal to leave her, her recovery, and their unlikely friendship. Bill's skepticism turned to awe, then respect. "I've heard of odd animal bonds," he said, "but seeing it, Sam, you know a bobcat's no pet if the Wildlife Service finds out."
Sam nodded, aware of the risks. "She's free to leave," he explained. "She just chooses to stay." Bill studied the pair by the fireplace, their fur nearly touching. "This is special," he said. "Maybe the world needs more of this." As February gave way to March, spring's first signs emerged. Snow melted, revealing patches of damp grass. Birds returned, their songs heralding a new season. With clearer roads, visitors would soon arrive, and Sam knew Sierra's half-wild, half-tame existence couldn't last. One evening, watching the sunset with Duke and Sierra beside him, Sam decided to call James. His son had ties to a wildlife conservation center near Denver. Perhaps they could help. The next morning, Sam shared the story, emphasizing Duke and Sierra's bond. James, practical yet empathetic, promised to explore options. A week later, James called back. His friend at the conservation center explained that Sierra might struggle to readapt to the wild after so long with humans. More importantly, her bond with Duke was worth studying for insights into animal behavior. The center proposed a unique solution, a special permit allowing Sam to keep Sierra as part of a study on interspecies interaction, with conditions like regular health checks and behavioral logs. Sierra could stay. When spring bloomed, bringing wild flowers and clear skies, Sam watched Duke and Sierra play in a field, a dog and a bobcat, an old protector and a wild creature, sharing a language of trust. Their story spread through Elk Ridge. Skepticism turned to curiosity, then admiration. Ellen Morrison, a local science teacher, asked to bring her students to the ranch. Sam agreed, stimulating they keep their distance and understand Sierra was a wild animal choosing to stay. The visit exceeded expectations. Duke basked in the attention while Sierra watched cautiously from afar. Lily, a quiet 8-year-old, said they don't know they're not supposed to be friends. They just care about each other. By summer, researchers began studying Duke and Sierra. A zoologist visited monthly, documenting their interactions. Sam kept detailed logs, noting new behaviors. The zoologist was fascinated by Sierra's learning from Duke, even showing a sense of duty toward the sheep, watching over new lambs from a distance. That midsummer, Sam found a nest of grass and fur in the barn's corner. Sierra had given birth to 3 bobcat kittens. She guarded them fiercely but allowed Duke near, a privilege extended to no one else for days. Duke lay by the barn entrance, vigilant. The researchers were stunned. A wild bobcat giving birth in a human environment was unprecedented.
2 weeks later, Sierra let Sam see the kittens, 2 males and 1 female, with spotted fur and bright eyes. Duke, lying beside Sierra and her litter, gently licking their fur, became one of Sam's cherished memories. A documentary crew arrived that fall to capture this extraordinary tale. Sam, a private man, was hesitant, but agreed after James argued it could inspire compassion for nature. The crew filmed Duke and Sierra hunting, resting together, and Sierra teaching her kittens, with Duke watching proudly. Reporter Leslie Chen asked Sam what made their bond special. "They don't see differences," he said. "We see a dog and a wild cat and assume they're enemies. But Duke saw a creature in need. Sierra saw a loyal friend. They don't let the world's rules dictate their feelings." The documentary, The Guardian and His Bobcat Friend, aired that winter, drawing millions of viewers and global attention to Sam's ranch. Letters flooded in, thanking him for sharing the story. The Conservation Center launched an educational program, allowing small groups to visit the ranch twice monthly to learn about interspecies bonds and coexistence with nature. Years later, the town dubbed Sam's ranch the Sanctuary Ranch, a symbol of harmony between humans, pets, and wildlife. At 10, Duke slowed, his joints aching, no longer keeping pace with Sierra. Their bond, though, grew deeper. Sierra's kittens matured and left for the wild, occasionally returning with their own young. Sam often sat on his porch, watching new generations of bobcats, unafraid of humans, thanks to Sierra. One spring morning, Sam found Duke still on his bed. Arthritis and age had claimed his friend. Sam buried him under his favorite oak, where he'd guarded the sheep. Sierra stood watch, silent, as if grasping the moment's weight. Sam feared Sierra would leave, but she stayed, returning nightly to the armchair she'd shared with Duke, taking on his role as guardian for new lambs. Instead of another German shepherd, Sam adopted a mixed-breed puppy from a local shelter, naming him Hope. Sierra accepted him quickly, as if seeing Duke's spirit in him. As Sam aged, James and his family took over ranch duties. Sam's granddaughter, Emily, bonded with Sierra, now silver-spotted and old, allowing the girl to touch her, a rare privilege. On the night Sierra died, a decade after arriving, Sam sensed her time was near. She'd grown frail, eating less. She lay on the armchair, Sam stroking her fur, Hope nearby. "Thank you," Sam whispered. "You've taught us so much." The next morning, he buried Sierra beside Duke under the oak, marking their graves with a stone, friends without boundaries. Their story lived on through visiting bobcats, students learning from their bond, and policy changes inspired by the research. At 80, Sam sat on his porch with Hope, watching the valley, knowing Duke and Sierra's legacy endured.